Hello, and welcome to the February episode of the monthly online program series by Les Dames d'Escoffier, Washington, D.C. Regional Chapter. My name is Sheilah Kaufman. I'm president of the board of directors of the D.C. chapter of Les Dames d'Escoffier this year. Les Dames d'Escoffier International is a philanthropic and educational nonprofit organization with 42 chapters and 2,400 members around the world. Members are high-achieving women professionals in food, fine beverages, hospitality, and associated fields. The Washington, D.C. regional chapter raises funds through events, sponsorships, and donations to distribute as grants and scholarships benefiting women, food and beverage professionals in the DMV region. Today's program will feature chocolate history, recipes, demos, culinary tips, recommendations, and more. It is our early Valentine gift to chocolate lovers. Now, I will ask Bonnie Benwick, our program's vice president, to lead this evening's speakers to share their chocolate expertise with you.
Thank you, Sheilah, and welcome to Kathy Gold, president of Les Dames d'Escoffier International. We're honored to have you. Also, my BFF from college, Carla Lindeen. Great to have you here. So tonight's going to be a lot of fun. We've got a range of history, of fun facts, of demos, recipes, tips, just about something for everybody. And I know it's Black History Month, but it's also kind of chocolate month. So we're giving this to you a week in advance of Valentine's Day so that you can get your chocolate on. The order of tonight's business is I'm going to turn it over to Winnette, who is actually joining us from Trinidad, and she's got some special things to show us. And then next we'll hear from Carolyn Crow, who's a former pastry chef, and then Fran Costigan and Rabia Kamara from Ruby Scoops in Richmond. She's also out of town. And then finally, I'm going to do a Q&A with Sheilah Kaufman, who's a member here in town. So Winnette, I'm turning it over to you.
Hello, everyone. Bonnie, thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. It is such a pleasure to be with everyone tonight and to share about everyone's favorite chocolate. We have a wonderful lineup, as Bonnie has already shared, and we are going to start at the very beginning. We're going to start with the cacao pods themselves. As Bonnie said, I am actually in Trinidad and Tobago, which is where I was born and raised. In fact, I am actually sitting in my parents' house, the house that I spent the latter years, my latter high school years before I moved to the US for college. And so it's a real pleasure. When Bonnie first told me about this, I was like, oh, I don't know if I could do it. But I was like, wait a minute, I am going to be in the birthplace of the Trinitario cocoa cacao plant. And so we can definitely make this work. And so I'm super excited to be able to do this with you guys tonight. So what is the cacao plant? What sort of varieties exist? And how does Trinidad play a role in all of this? So for those of you who don't know, Trinidad and Tobago are the southernmost islands in the Caribbean archipelago. We're actually just off the coast of Venezuela. So our climate, our terroir is very, very conducive to growing the cacao plant. And in fact, in 1525 was when the very first cacao plants were brought by the Spanish to Trinidad and Tobago. It was specifically the Criollo variety. That's spelled Criollo. And by the 18th century, so the late 1700s, is when cultivation of cacao really began in earnest in Trinidad and Tobago. There was a hybrid that came along that was actually a blend between the two original varieties of the cacao. So the Criollo that I just mentioned and the Forastero. So here in Trinidad, in the late 17th century is when that hybrid was developed. It's a cross again between the Criollo and the Forastero, and that produced a Trinitario actually named after Trinidad and Tobago. So what makes the Trinitario bean particularly special? Well, it was specifically designed to be able to thrive within our climate. And it turns out that our natural terroir actually makes for a really, really, really beautiful, what we call a fine flavor chocolate. So in the 1830s, believe it or not, our tiny island, which is about 30 by 50 miles wide, was responsible for 20% of the global cocoa bean production.
Wow. Oh no. You froze up a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
For a tiny, tiny piece of land. And that really is that and Tobago. Yes. Oh,
You're back.
okay. Sorry about that. Here we are, the downsides of being all the way in Trinidad and Tobago. So, but yeah, if I'm frozen, just give me a shout. All right. So the Trinitario bean is what was developed here. And so 20% of the global cacao production. Now, what unfortunately happened not too long after that, really between the late 1800s and the early 1900s, was the discovery of hydrocarbon-based natural resources, and oil and natural gas. We're the only Caribbean island with oil and natural gas. So who wants to work on a cocoa plantation when you can go work in an air-conditioned office? That is essentially what happened. And so nowadays, it is actually not unusual to drive around and just see abandoned cocoa plantations everywhere. Meanwhile, you had countries like Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire, the Ivory Coast, where cacao production really, really ramped up. However, within the last several years, cacao cultivation in Trinidad and Tobago has really seen a tremendous resurgence. So let's talk a little bit about the pods. You can see there's a tremendous variety to how these look. I'm going to take you through a few different stages of pods. This is you can see really tiny guy right here. And then he begins to change color as he gets older. These are different types of pods here, not just the Trinitario. In fact, if I want to point out the Trinitario, that's this one right here. So it is ripe in the state and sort of a bright orange and yellow. Another one of them is right here. I've actually already cut this one open. No peeking on the inside, please. This is what it looks like. And then we have cut a few open, and you can see right here. Now, don't look at how I've cut it. This is not how you want to cut it. If I really knew what I was doing to cut a cocoa pod, it would be cut only on the pod. No seeds would be exposed. You'd just be able to pull out that long sleeve of seeds. But here you have the beautiful, you see the cacao beans right there, and they're surrounded with that pulpy flesh. So the next step in becoming cocoa from cacao is first the process of fermentation. And so what that does is it really utilizes all the sugars that exist in these outside portion of the bean. And essentially you have wonderful bacteria that ferment it down, and then you're left with a bean that you can roast. We had the beans right here these are beans that are roasted right here in Trinidad and Tobago. If you can see them, I'm gonna hold up one right here. And then once these are roasted, they are cracked and the thin shell is removed. And then you're left with the nibs. And the nibs are what you ultimately will grind, and that will become chocolate. You will add sugar, essentially, and that will become chocolate. So that process of making chocolate from cacao was a secret process for many years, following the paradigm that we know all too well. Beautiful product at origin, which is taken essentially or sold for next to nothing, taken to a larger, more developed country and processed with some secret procedure where only the people on the developed end get to really experience all of the benefits of that high value end product. So that paradigm has changed significantly within recent years, with not only the revitalization of the growth of cacao, but also in making chocolate. Those processes are no longer secret. And so as I wind it down, what I'm going to do is show you some of my favorite local chocolates that are made right here in Trinidad and Tobago. So one brand, and some of these are in fact available in the US, or you could order them online from the actual folks who make them here in Trinidad and Tobago. So one brand is this brand, it's Sun Eaters. I don't know if you can see it too well. There we go. This is actually one of my favorites. So this is owned by a lady named Jillian Goddard. She's very much a chocolate activist. She has been a key part of going into local communities where the cacao is actually grown and teaching farmers how to make chocolate. And she does this not only in Trinidad and Tobago, but all around the world. She does it in Ghana, in Cote d'Ivoire, in Grenada, and many other places. So there's a lot of really exciting things happening in chocolate. Her favorite, my favorite of her bars, of the Sanitas bars, is actually the ginger bar, which is this one. It's got local Trinidad and Tobago ginger. This is a 65% bar, and the dry ginger is actually encased in the chocolate. I love it. One of perhaps my favorite in terms of the packaging and the presentation is a brand that if you ever came to Trinidad and Tobago, if I ever brought you if I ever brought you to Trinidad and Tobago, we would go to her studio. The name is Coco Bell. Check out that packaging. Absolutely stunning. This one is actually just a 72% dark chocolate. I love it. These are her hazelnuts. Look at this packaging, yeah, guys. It's just out of this world. Chocolate covered hazelnuts, and then there's some local bonbons that she does featuring local produce. So this is the citron, and one of my favorites, the guava. So with that, guys, I'm going to end my bit, and I am excited to introduce our next speaker. Bonnie, yeah, go right ahead.
I've got a question from Danielle Cook, and she wants to know, how long does the process take to get the cacao pods through fermentation, drying, and roasting until it becomes a chocolate bar?
That is such a wonderful question. Thank you, Danielle. And so it really depends, but the process of fermentation really takes several days. Roasting itself could be anywhere from a few hours to a day. And then the process of grinding, or what you call conching, could take another day or so. So truth is, it really depends. But all in all, if everything was being done in the same location, it could be, I would say, about 2 weeks from harvesting of a ripe pod through fermentation, roasting, and then finally producing the product. But remember that these roasted beans, once they're roasted in a dried state, can last a very, very long time. So for many, many years, this roasted bean is what we exported, what Trinidad and Tobago exported, and what several other countries that are cocoa producing countries, what they export. So this part lasts a really long time.
So Kathy Gold has the same question that I was going to ask. The growing time from the seed that you showed us to bloom to the ripe pod?
Again, a wonderful question. So cacao trees, it's an exercise in patience. Let's say I decided today to have a cocoa estate and I wanted to plant it. It's 3 years between when I plant my first seedlings, which you would acquire from. So here in Trinidad and Tobago, we have the Cocoa Research Unit, which is part of the university here, perhaps doing the most advanced research in cacao-based agriculture. You'd get a seedling, and then that you would plant on an estate, and then you have to plant partner trees like bananas and so on to go along with it. You can't just have a whole bunch of cacao with nothing else. They will not survive. Shade is like a really critical part of the process. So it's 3 years just to get a tree mature enough to produce fruit that would be turned into chocolate.
So Leslie wants to know what the pulp is used for. And is that the oil that can be used in like body creams?
So not quite, but that's an amazing question, because for a long, long time, that juice that's produced, and it's that wonderful pulpy juice, went to waste. But now you have people who are actually making just a beverage from it, much like you would make from a juiced watermelon, for example. You basically would strip out all the pulp, save only some of it for fermentation, but use that pulp to create juices. We don't do that a lot in Trinidad, but there's certainly other countries where that is being done, and they produce this lovely beverage. What you're referring to as the cocoa butter actually comes from when you press the cocoa nib itself in order to produce chocolate. When you actually press the nib, you get two things. You get what you can turn into cocoa powder, and then you get cocoa butter. So cocoa butter, which we use in cosmetics, that comes from pressing the nibs.
And we'll have time for one more. Alan Schleifer, sorry about the mispronunciation. Oh, actually, here's Doreen before that. She said, you participated in my organization's Black Cake competition some years ago. Do you have experience with cocoa tea? That's her favorite.
Yeah, I love that question. Cocoa tea is just sort of near and dear to all Trinidadians because we grew up having it. And cocoa tea is essentially when you take these nibs and you somewhat crudely combine it with spices. It's not a very refined product, and so it's very, very common. My grandparents would have grown up drinking this. It's like a hot chocolate, but a rustic spiced hot chocolate, and it's so delicious. So thank you for that question.
All right, so now we can move on.
Fantastic. Okay, so without further ado, we are going to move on to Carolyn Crow. Carolyn, hello, is a former pastry chef and chocolatier. Carolyn is going to give us a bit of primer on how to choose the right chocolate, and she has kindly provided a wonderful list, I believe, from which we can nibble while she talks. So take it away, Carolyn. Great to have you.
Thank you so much, Winnette. How special that you are in the perfect place to be talking about a chocolate with us. Fantastic. I am coming to you from my basement podcasting studio, so it's not quite the same, but I have a great deal of good chocolate down here as well. Like Winnette said, I was a pastry chef and chocolatier in the DC area for about 10 years. Important distinction between a chocolatier and a chocolate maker. A chocolate maker does that whole process that Winnette just described to us. A chocolatier, on the other hand, takes that finished chocolate product, which is also called couverture, and we turn that into bonbons. Typically, I would say bonbons. If you say truffles, that generally refers to just the little round ganache balls that are covered in cocoa powder, and they look like the truffle mushrooms. So we will refer to chocolate confections generally as bonbons. Those are made from chocolate, made by chocolate makers. And that chocolate that we use to make bonbons can also be called couverture. So that's a little bit of a fast and loose review of different chocolate terminology. When I was a chocolatier, I worked at a little boutique right outside DC that used only Valrhona chocolate, a pretty premium chocolate brand. Most of what I want to talk to you about tonight is how to responsibly choose very high quality chocolate. There was a fantastic story in the Washington Post a few years ago about the chocolate industry and unpaid labor in the chocolate industry, which we of course know there's another name for unpaid labor. And we're not going to talk about it and bring this whole evening down, but just want everybody to be aware that you need to be very careful about where you're getting your chocolate from and making sure that you are enjoying chocolate that you can be proud of. So Valrhona, we'll start at the top and we'll work our way down a little bit. Valrhona is a relatively small company that has very private practices. They are not very upfront about exactly how they run their business because they are so small and premium. They play things very close to the vest. The product is excellent. I mean, it's there's nothing better tasting than Valrhona, in my opinion. I did go to the Valrhona factory and smell the smells and taste the tastes, and it was absolutely extraordinary and beyond compare. But the good news is there are a lot of very good brands that are made here in the US. They have more transparent business practices, and you can feel good about getting chocolate from those places. I'm curious, did anybody here go out with that shopping list that I sent out? Yeah, okay, Bonnie, you're raising your hand and you're already off mute. Can you tell us what you got, Bonnie?
I got Choco Love.
Choco Love, okay, what did you think of it?
It was on sale at Whole Foods, first of all, so it could be on its way out, but it tasted pretty good.
Yeah,
There was a plain, I can't remember the percentage. I got an 85% just because I wanted to see how bitter it was. But there was also one that was filled with almond butter, which spoke to me. So I like them both. I don't think I'd ever gotten that brand before.
Oh, great. And Joan says that she got them all. So good shopping, Joan. Very, very proud of you. So now, Joan, you have everything you need at home to have your own little chocolate tasting, which is, you do that a lot like you do a cheese tasting. You want a good variety, a bunch of different flavors, and even textures. Bonnie also brought up an interesting point about the percentage. I think we sort of zoomed right past the percentage question, and it's something that people can be a little bit confused about sometimes. The percentage here, I've got a Scharfenberger right here, 99%. Okay, this is basically, you would consider that unsweetened, versus 72% from Trader Joe's. That percentage tells you how much of this chocolate is chocolate derived from the cacao pods. So everything that's not that percentage is mostly sugar. So the higher the percentage, the lower amount of sugar is in it. So that 99% bar, that's only 1% sugar. That is a super dark bar. Bonnie, was that 85% a super dark bar?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I can imagine. So when you're talking about percentages, typically a milk chocolate is going to be anywhere from, well, honestly, Hershey chocolate is like 11% cacao, which I believe that is the bare minimum that you need to be legally considered chocolate. So if you start down there at the bottom, 11%, anything above that until you get to like 40% is going to be considered milk chocolate. So milk chocolate is made up of the products from the cacao, so your cocoa solids, your cocoa butter, milk powder to give it that milk flavor, and of course sugar and vanilla. Once you get past 40%, getting up to around, I don't know, like 64%, now you're talking about semi-sweet chocolate. And then 64% to 85%, I would consider that a bittersweet chocolate. Once you're past 85%, I don't know if it's really very enjoyable for any application. I mean, maybe if you're very, very health conscious and really restricting your sugar. Yep, Alan is saying from a health conscious, sure, lower sugar is never a bad idea if you are very specifically paying attention to that in your diet. I can imagine 85% is going to taste a heck of a lot sweeter than completely unsweetened chocolate. So it's not a bad thing. I just don't think that I would personally enjoy it very much. I'm a little bit all over the place here. What else do I need to tell you about? I feel like there's so much information I need to share with you and so little time. The important information that I want to share is the most important thing that I want to tell you is the brands that I like to keep on hand in my home for the various baking projects that I do. Right. My favorite brand right now is going to be Guittard. It's made here in the USA. It was founded in the early 20th century, and it is still privately held. Somehow I've ended up on like this weird rabbit hole of conglomerates. I'm always looking up who owns these various companies. Maybe that happens when you turn 40, you start Googling that stuff. Right. But so Guittard is still privately held by, I'm not kidding, Gary Guittard. So when you get a Guittard product, it's near SFO. Yeah, they have a fantastic product, and it's just really good quality. We consider it like a workhorse chocolate in the baking and pastry world. It's not going to be as complex as a premium Valrhona product, but it's still Very, very good. So I love the Guittard, and I always have on hand a 65%, I'm sorry, not a 65%. I always have on hand a 58% for my semi-sweet and a 72% for my bittersweet. The bittersweet you're going to use for your dark chocolate baking application. So a really dark chocolate decadent brownie, you would put your 72% couverture in there. Something that you want to be a little bit sweeter, like chopping up chunks to put in your chocolate chunk cookies, you're going to want to use the semi-sweet there. Also, I don't think I have ever chopped up chocolate like since I left culinary school. If you have a bar like this, please don't ruin your knives by chopping it. You can throw it on the ground and then grab your meat tenderizer and just beat the living heck out of it, okay? And then you are going to have perfectly chopped up chunked chocolates, and you're not going to ruin your perfectly lovely knives.
That's fascinating. You've got about a minute and a half left before you can take some questions.
Okay. What do I need to cover? I've told you the most important information. Candy melts. Is this chocolate? No. Contains no chocolate. There's no cocoa butter, no cocoa solids. You don't ever need that for anything. So just forget that those exist. Why do people use them? Because you don't have to temper them. We don't have enough time to go into what tempering is all about, but maybe Ruby is going to talk about it in her demo. I don't know. Chocolate chips, also not technically chocolate. They're not couverture, but they do contain chocolate. So at least you're getting more than just chocolate flavor there. I don't know. Are there any questions in the chat that I can address, Bonnie?
Yeah, there are certainly. So Alan, who apparently is really into this, says, what are the best nations as sources as chocolate producers, like Belgium, for example?
So that all depends on your personal taste. Belgium is really great for milk chocolate. Switzerland is also excellent for milk chocolate because they've got those happy alpine cows. But I think that, like I said, Valrhona is one of my favorites. That's French. We've got great chocolate makers here in the USA. So anywhere in the world, you can find great chocolate producers. It just all depends on what you like.
Okay. Oh, that's your timer. So any local chocolate fairs or places to sample great chocolates that you know of? They don't have to be like local, but
yeah, I don't know. I've never been to a chocolate fair. I think that anywhere that you find local or small chocolatiers, small producers, you should ask them who they're using for their couverture, and they should be proud to tell you who they're using. And if they don't want to tell you because it's a proprietary secret, that's okay too. What you don't want is, you don't want them to say like, oh, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Like you want to know that they're using the good stuff.
So Fran says in Seattle they have chocolate fairs, which sort of makes sense. There's some good chocolate there. I've been to that Theo factory. Seattle.
Yeah, and San Francisco has several great chocolate producers. Dandelion chocolate is out in San Francisco as well. So
yeah,
you know,
somebody mentioned that. Have you ever worked with that? And is it a single source chocolate?
I don't know that it's single source. I mean, any of these chocolate makers are going to probably have a blend versus their more expensive, more premium single source. So if you get a Valrhona 64% Manjari, that is going to all come from Madagascar beans. And those Madagascar beans have a very distinctive red fruit flavor. Some people love it, some people hate it. But you can really taste the terroir of those single origin beans. But when you have more general pastry applications, you don't want something with such a very distinctive chocolate flavor. You just want something more generically chocolate. So that's where you're going to run into, you know, just your blends, and that's fine. That has its place too.
Okay. Beth says, and this is news to me, Chocolate House at DuPont Circle has a chocolate fair and chocolate events.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, really good to know.
See you there.
Let's see what else. Somebody wanted to know what chocolate shop you worked at.
I worked at Artisan Confections in Clarendon for 4 years. It was sold a year or two ago. You can hear my old boss, Jason, on my podcast talking about ice cream.
Oh, tell us about your podcast. What's your podcast?
My podcast is called Sunday Fun Day, and me and my husband review ice cream and goof around. And it's family friendly.
That sounds like fun. Oh,
Yeah.
Kathy Gold also says Amy Guittard is a Dom in the San Francisco chapter.
Oh, cool. I'm a big fan.
Wow, we should have had her on.
Yeah.
We'll do this again next February. Andrea wants to know if you ever tried the Calibo Ruby chocolate.
I had it years ago. You know, all of those chocolates that are supposed to taste like something else, like the Valrhona passion fruit chocolate. And I know that they're delicious, but just from a practical standpoint, I don't really want to work with them to like create ganaches or pastries. I want to be able to blend the flavors myself. So I remember that ruby chocolate came out, I think, when I was in pastry school. So it's been around for a while.
Okay. Patty Collette says the city of Fairfax has a chocolate lovers festival the first weekend of February.
See, I should have known. Yeah, the chocolate lovers know all about the chocolate fairs. Yeah.
So Asan asked for the difference between fèves and couverture.
So fèves is just the marketing word that Valrhona made up to call their little discs. It doesn't mean anything.
Wow.
I think Calbo calls theirs, oh shoot, I knew it earlier and now I can't remember. But yeah, sometimes they just make up a little word to call the discs.
That's fascinating. That's fascinating. And Diane wants to know, when should you use chocolate chips?
Oh, chocolate chip cookies. I mean, listen, I've got a 25-pound case of Guittard chocolate chips just off camera. I mean, like I use chocolate chips plenty, but I also like to throw in some chocolate chunks because they melt differently from chocolate chips. So the chocolate chips have extra stabilizers and stuff in them, which means that they are not going to get as gooey in your oven, which you don't want a huge mess all the time when you're making chocolate chip cookies, but it's good to have a balance of both.
Yeah, that's true. And that's
great question.
Yeah, that's good advice. All right. Winnette, I think we can let's see. Any advice? This is the last one from Doreen. Any advice as to the best cocoa powder? She mentions consideration from the Caribbean Foodways Alliance for those who have issues with lactose and sugar.
Yeah.
And cocoa tea lets you enjoy chocolate, and you can mix good cocoa powder, cinnamon, nutmeg, bay leaf in almond or cashew milk, which sounds like I need to be drinking that.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. I really like the Guittard cocoa powder. It's good. It's not the same as the Valrhona, which you can get at Whole Foods, but I'm actually also going to put in the chat the name of the website that I like to order all of my chocolate from. It's called worldwidechocolate.com, and they've got pretty decent prices on a wide variety of couvertures and garnishes and whatever you could possibly want. Oh, and I also want to share a list of, it's from foodispower.org, and they talk about all of the different producers that are making chocolate in an ethical way.
Thank you. Thank you. This has been great so far. I've really learned a lot just from the first two. All right, Winnette, we're moving on.
Sounds great. Just to quickly answer that question with regard to Dandelion Chocolate. Dandelion's an amazing chocolate company out in San Francisco. Their bars are primarily for tasting, as opposed to large quantity chocolate to the trade. So you could certainly bake with their product, but it really is more of a tasting experience, and they have a pastry shop and all of that. Moving right along, we have Fran Costigan. Fran, we are excited to hear from you because all of us are always looking for tasty ways to make sure we are including vegan options on our menus, in our own diets, and for our friends. So Fran is a celebrated vegan cookbook author. She is going to guide us through the best options for vegan chocolate. Take it away, Fran.
There, I'm unmuted. Well, thank you very much. And it's been very interesting listening to everyone. I want to show you something, Caroline. First, I wanted to show you these are vegan, this is vegan ganache covered cakes. So when you know what to use and you know how to do things, you're not missing anything. But vegan's a deal today. And this is to show Caroline. So this is the Trader Joe Pound Plus. I break it and I chop it in my Roku or food processor. This is accidentally vegan chocolate. So I actually have these lovely chocolates to show you. I mean, all of these are what we would call true vegan chocolates and Valrhona. And I've got white chocolate, which is like the holy grail of vegan chocolate. But I'm very short, it's just have to move my picture out of the way so I can get it to play. I know how to do this. Slideshow, here we go. But it's loading. All right, that's the wrong, here we go. This is real short because I want to talk about and I want to show you vegan chocolate so that you can see the global vegan pastry market is expected to be valued at these crazy numbers, and the demand for vegan pastry is not going anywhere. So we need to understand vegan chocolate. It is suitable for people with a variety of dietary considerations, primarily lactose intolerance, egg allergies, and limiting dietary cholesterol. Now, there shouldn't be milk in dark chocolate, but there can be. So just in the same way that you select any chocolate, non-vegan chocolate, you're going to select your vegan chocolate the same way. You're going to consider quality. Chocolate is vegan when it contains no milk solids of any kind, and the sugar is vegan. So if there's anybody here who doesn't know why cane sugar wouldn't be vegan, it's because cane sugar is filtered through bone char, and it is not considered vegan by vegans. It is never pure white. Depending on the brand you choose, it will be very, very, very pale to a little bit darker, but there's always a little bit of the molasses that's inherent in the cane in that chocolate. So this is something that vegans look for. And we have people who are allergic to dairy, and I'm sure you're aware, it's been all over the news lately that people have gotten sick and died from mislabeled items. So we always want to be really careful. A large percentage of people who are looking for vegan chocolate, the ethical vegans, for example, are always going to look at the fair trade chocolates and all the big companies. In other words, Caroline talked about this. There is still child slavery in the production of chocolate, and this is a big problem. So, for example, Hershey's does make a dark chocolate that is vegan, accidentally vegan, but most vegans won't use it because their practices are terrible. They're still using child slaves. So you still are going to be looking at the percentage, the bean to bar, the terroir, the flavor, the mouthfeel, and so on. Valrhona, from what I understand, I just spoke, I taught a class at Valrhona in New York, and then I met some of the representatives recently at one of the food shows, maybe the Natural Products Expo, and that's where I got these amazing, their new line. But they are now proudly saying ethical fair trade. I do work with a company called Puratos, which is an international company, and their Belle Collade chocolate comes from Belgium. It's out of this world, and they have gone fully ethical, sustainable, even their packaging. So this is something that people want to consider. There are great chocolates that are vegan, and there are awful chocolates that are vegan. And I think we would say that about any chocolate or any food at all. So I used to say to people way back in the beginning, I mean, I've been vegan for about 30 years, and I changed my diet because I had stomach aches all the time. When I was working as a pastry chef, I was lactose intolerant, and I didn't know that I was. And so that's what brought me in. So I would say, well, dark chocolate contains cocoa mass, cocoa butter, and sugar at its simplest. It's vegan, but you might get some ingredients such as lecithin or vanilla. Lecithin, if it is an emulsifier, if it's soy lecithin, you're going to run into a situation with people who have soy allergies. So a lot of manufacturers who do use emulsifiers, not everyone does, are using sunflower lecithin instead. Now, milk is not usually an ingredient in what we're calling dark chocolate, but you better read the label because the USDA allows up to 12% milk in dark chocolate. It can be very annoying or potentially deadly. When you get a bar, you know, I've got all these, this is a bar from Uganda. It's 85%. It says may contain milk, soy, wheat, almond, blah, blah, blah. Most of the chocolates say that because they're made on shared equipment, and the first few runs, you're definitely getting milk in your chocolates. I've talked to the manufacturers to be certain that your chocolate has absolutely no dairy in it. You want to choose a manufacturer that doesn't make any milk chocolate. And there are manufacturers who only do dark chocolate. Now, in terms of dark chocolate, you know, I assumed in the beginning, I love chocolate. I wrote a book called Vegan Chocolate because I love chocolate so much. And I have always so many different chocolates in my house and in different percentages and so on. Although most of my recipes, I use 70 to 72% chocolate. That's what works for me the most. But to be safe, you find a chocolate that is made on dedicated equipment, and you want to consider food allergies too. So I told you soy lecithin is an emulsifier, a problem for people who have soy allergies. Watch out for the inclusions too. Now, another question, people confuse gluten-free and vegan, and they aren't the same thing at all. You can be vegan and I'm not gluten-free. I eat gluten. I love bread. I love chocolate and bread together with a little salt. That is so good. So chocolate is inherently gluten-free, but again, you have to watch for shared equipment and inclusions. Now, some of you may have heard about paleo chocolate, which also gets mixed in with the vegan label. People who are following paleo diets don't use any cane sugar at all. They like coconut sugar. Now, frankly, I haven't really liked chocolates that I've tasted. Some very fine brands are doing chocolates with coconut sugar, but there is a flavor added that hasn't been pleasant to me. You know, we have individual palates, right? So what a 70% to you might taste different from a 70% to me. But I recently got this chocolate. Can you see while this is up on the screen? Or I'll hold it later. It's called Hu, H-U, and it's a coconut sugar sweetened chocolate. That's actually nice. I liked it. Now, vegan milk chocolates have become a really big thing. The chocolate makers are using oat milk, which is my favorite, coconut milk, almond milk, or a combination. Some are absolutely delicious. Some are terrible. So you have to see. I recently found an Israeli brand that has launched in the United States. It's called Seventh Heaven. And it's a candy bar, and it tastes so much like the milk chocolate that I remember. I couldn't get over it. And then I said, you know, white chocolate hasn't been something that vegans could do because white chocolate contains milk powder. This, you know, I'm going to run through this and then hold things up. So there are some really nice ones now. One is from L'Augusta, who has a shop up in like Hudson, New York or something like that. She does mail order. She does gorgeous chocolates. And her white chocolate is used at 11 Madison Park. Valrona's coming out with a vegan white chocolate, but it's going to be made with nuts. So there's a little problem there because so many people are allergic to nuts. Can't please everyone, but you know, if we can get something like this one, this is cocoa butter, fair trade vegan cane sugar, coconut milk powder, and she's got soy lecithin in there. And Felshon has a rice milk powder, coconut and almonds chocolate. Comes in a big tub. So I think that's it. That's a ganache that I made. And now I'm going to stop sharing and show you some of my chocolates. This is a milk chocolate, a new-ish milk chocolate. It's Dr. Bronner's, and it comes in different flavors. Honestly, I think it looks like the soap, but it tastes very good. Theo has been sold, but they were one of the first. And Theo is just cocoa beans, cane sugar, and cocoa butter. I always have to remind people when I'm talking about vegan chocolate that cocoa butter isn't dairy butter. It's the fat in the cocoa beans that's pressed out to make cocoa powders. And there are two kinds of cocoa powders, and I use unsweetened cocoa powder, alkalized and non-alkalized. We have, I want to talk about so-called raw chocolate because a lot of people consider, you know, say, oh, vegan, raw chocolate, raw cacao, and there is no such thing. And I have confirmed this with chocolate makers who say, well, yeah, we say raw on our package, but we know there's not. During the process of fermentation of the beans, the temperature goes above what is allowable in chocolate, in raw desserts. So you can say unroasted chocolate would be more correct. Pacari makes a nice one, a nice tasting one. I think roasted cocoa beans. First of all, there's a safety factor. If you've ever seen cocoa beans just hanging around, there's some safety to that. And the different methods of roasting are going to give your chocolates different flavors. So all of these are chocolates, are all chocolates. Taza, which is a Mexican style chocolate, they don't make a milk chocolate. This is L'Augusta's white chocolate. Here's one from Europe that's delicious. And then I have the Valrhona Inspiration line, which is cocoa butter and flavoring, fruit flavoring. So it's very expensive. I think Caroline said that, or somebody said that earlier, but really special for different. This is what it looks like. I mean, I can't stop eating them. I don't think I'm going to have anything
Pull it back
left,
a little bit. There you
anything
go.
left to make anything with, honestly. And
Okay.
this is a Bel Calade from Puratos. This is a 72%. I've also have used their 80%. There is, I have had one or two really high percentage chocolates that tasted good. I don't generally go above 72%, but I've had some 85. You know, it's interesting what you said about the chocolate. Was it Chocolove you were talking about, Bonnie?
Yeah.
So I had picked this up at a show a couple of years ago, and it says strong dark chocolate. So I was expecting like a real bittersweet taste. It isn't to my palate. It's really smooth. The list that Caroline gave, it's the foodempowermentproject.org, and they have a chocolate list, and they say, here are the chocolates we recommend. Here are some that are talking to us. Here are some we can't be comfortable with. And for them, they're not talking about the quality of the chocolate. They're talking about is the chocolate being made ethically? And for some reason, this chocolate, I believe, is not on the list. I don't know.
Ah, okay, Fran, we've got I mean, I know you could go on, you know so much about this. We've got a question from Doreen. You mentioned alkanized and non-alkanized. What's the difference?
Yeah. So cocoa powder is natural, which think about Hershey's cocoa powder. It's a lighter color. And then the darker color cocoa powders are treated with an alkali. Van Houten started that.
That's the Dutch process?
The Dutch process. So use whichever tastes good to you in your hot chocolate, but when you're baking, they're not interchangeable. The leavening is particular to the kind of cocoa powder. But, cocoa powder, pure cocoa powder is, even the higher fat ones, which are 22% or 24%, are still lower fat than solid chocolate. Yes.
Great. Great. Thank you. Thank you so much. It
You're
looks like you're very chocolate friendly. I'd appreciate it if you can just go into the chat and put a link to your vegan chocolate book and also some of the chocolates that you mentioned.
Absolutely.
And I'll write those down. Carolyn says an important note for gluten-free folks. Some milk chocolates contain barley malt for flavor, and that is not gluten-free because it's barley.
Right.
And Valrhona 40% Javara falls under that. So that's really
why you really have to read those labels.
Yeah, if there's a gluten-free person who also can't have chocolate, I think that's just the cruelest thing of all. All right, Winnette, we're moving on to the next one.
That's right. Thank you so much, Fran. Rather enlightening. Many thanks. We are indeed moving on, and we have Rabia Kamara next. Rabia, we are so excited to hear from you. Everybody's favorite food, at least my two sons, is ice cream. And you are, in fact, the owner of Ruby Scoops and Ice Cream in Richmond, Virginia. And we are super excited to see and hear your demo. So take it away, Rabia.
She's setting up a demo camera situation, by the way. So that's what the delay is for.
We can almost see you.
You can see me and you can hear me?
We can hear you. And now we can hear you. It looks
Sorry,
like
somebody keeps muting me. All right. I'm trying to see if you guys can see me. It's not working, so I'm gonna just go use my phone. We'll do that. That's what we're gonna do. Oh, I figured it out, guys.
There you are. Hey.
Hi. Okay. So, hi, I'm Rabia Kamara. I am the owner of Ruby Scoops Ice Cream and Sweets in Richmond, Virginia. I'm originally from Maryland. As you can imagine, I spend all day around sugar and milk. So even though I have a sweet tooth at home, what I do for that is something quick because I'm usually on my feet all day. So I wanted to give you guys something fast that you can do that includes chocolate. So ironically, in addition to what Fran was discussing, we're making a vegan chocolate pudding that's going to be made with oat milk. So I have all of my things kind of laid out to show you. I have to flip my camera, please. Okay, so I have in here 1/3 cup of sugar. That's also got 2 tablespoons of cornstarch and a pinch of salt, 1/3 cup of Dutch processed cocoa. This is 4 ounces of 64% chocolate. So as they were discussing earlier, kind of on the semi-sweet side, because we already have the sugar that's going to make it sweeter. And of course, if there's milk in it, it's not vegan. And then vanilla and oat milk. So the first thing we're going to do is take our dry mixture and pop it into a saucepan. And we're going to just make sure that's all combined.
Is that Rabia or Rubia? Are we saying it wrong?
Yes, it's
Spelling it
Rabia
wrong.
like Maria.
Oh my goodness. So RABIA or RUBIA?
RABIA.
Okay, good. All right.
Yeah. So to this mixture, I'm going to slowly add 2 cups of oat milk. Typically, if I wasn't holding my phone, you'd be able to see me do
So
the
was
mixture, but
there
I
a
have to
reason
do
why
it
you
in half.
used oat milk instead of almond milk, for example?
I don't like almond milk personally, and my husband has an allergy,
There you go.
so I use oat milk. I also find that oat milk has a creamier consistency, and we use that or coconut in the shop. But again, he has a nut allergy, so at home I just use oats. We don't really drink a lot of dairy in the house because we eat a lot of ice cream, so we balance it out that way.
Got it.
So I'm gonna add 2 cups of this oat milk, and we're gonna want to turn the heat on. I have it kind of between medium and high because what we want to do is activate that cornstarch. So I'm just gonna go ahead and stir this up, and it might take a little longer than the time that I have. So I'm just gonna try to run through what we do and why. And once that's in, I'm gonna add this cocoa, and we'll stir that in. Sorry, y'all, hope I'm not making you dizzy with my switching of my hands.
So what kind of cocoa powder are you using?
This is a Dutch processed cocoa. So at the shop we use Haribo/Cacao Berry because they are one company now. So we use that at home, sorry, at the shop. So I brought some home because surprisingly enough, we don't really eat a lot of chocolate as much as I love it. So we're just gonna stir this all together and make sure that the cocoa breaks down. And ultimately what we wanna do is see it get thicker. I have it on a little bit of a higher heat than I typically would because I want to be able to show you all as much as I possibly can in the time frame that I have. Does anyone have any questions while I'm doing this? I don't know if Bonnie, if you're down to read them to me, I'm also happy to answer.
I mean, I was going to ask if chocolate pudding is a great dessert or the greatest dessert, but I mean, I know how I feel about ice cream, and I think I know how you feel about ice cream. So maybe chocolate ice cream's got to beat. I don't know.
Chocolate ice cream is delicious. I feel like, there's something simple and nostalgic about chocolate pudding. And like I grew up really enjoying dirt and worms as a kid. And actually we do that as an ice cream flavor for Halloween. So and again, my husband, he loves gummies. So this will be fun because we can eat this with Oreos and gummy worms and feel like we're in grade school again.
Yeah.
Which is nice when you're an
One
adult.
of my most requested desserts with all the fancy desserts is chocolate pudding.
Because it's delicious. There's something just really nice about simple desserts. And this is very simple and anyone can do it. I know, most of the people here are pastry chefs. So it's nice to come home and not have to do pastry things per se and still get to enjoy something sweet. So I'm going to try to wait for this to thicken. But basically what we're going to do once it does get thicker is add 4 ounces of chocolate, and we're going to stir that vigorously so that it all is melted and everything is homogeneous. And then we'll add vanilla. I like to add some coconut oil or butter for sheen and mouthfeel. And also, I think it just keeps it from getting like the pudding skin. But I personally like the pudding skin, but you might not. So,
Rabia, we have a question coming in. Is there
Sure.
any trick or hack to how to get the cocoa powder mixed into the liquid more easily?
So a lot of the time when we work with cocoa powder, we do suggest kind of straining it so that there aren't chunks. But I strained this prior to because I'm trying to, do the TV magic.
Got it.
So that definitely helps is to strain it through and also just whisking vigorously to help break it down. Because as you could see, it's all broken down. And it helps that the oat milk is heating as well. So that helps for it to dissolve some. Someone said how much sugar and how much cornstarch.
Right.
So it's a 1/3 cup of sugar. If you wanted to use brown sugar, you could go maybe like a quarter, just because it'll be sweeter and be a little more molassesy. And then for cornstarch, it's 2 tablespoons. And the cocoa and the sugar are equal amounts. And this makes about 4 to 6 servings. It depends on what size you are. It's about 3 in my house.
Would you mind, Rabia, when you're all done, perhaps putting the recipe in the chat? Would that be okay?
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
I'll put it in cups and grams in case anyone else is just a pastry
Awesome.
to use their scale.
Perfect.
So we're gonna keep on going. I'm not gonna let it go all the way because I do want to show you guys how to do all of it, and I'll let it keep going. But here is my chocolate. I chopped it up beforehand. I know Winnette, you said you don't chop. Who said they don't chop chocolate anymore? Is that Carolyn?
I don't chop chocolate anymore. I just beat it with a mallet.
Yeah. So in the shop we use, obviously, like we use pistils or chips. But if I'm doing something that I want a chunk in or I need it to melt, I'll chop it up. Because at home I'm not bringing my $75 chocolate here for the two of us to consume. It's not that serious for me. I like it to be at the shop. So you can already see also that this is getting much thicker than when I was first whisking it. So I'm just going to keep whisking vigorously until all the chocolate is melted. And if you look, you can see some of it on the top.
Mm-hmm.
We'll just keep going. Sorry, y'all. I had my whole computer set up so that you could like see me do the magic, and it did not work. Technology has failed me.
We
This is
want
okay. This
smell-o-vision.
is great.
We want smell-o-vision.
Yeah, there we go. I'll waft it for you. Let's see if that helps. So it's getting a lot thicker. And do keep in mind that once you take this off the stove and put it in whatever containers you're going to be serving it in or eating it out of, it will continue to kind of cook and thicken as it's warm. So you don't want it to get like super stodgy or have the consistency of pudding you're used to, because then it'll probably be too hard.
Could this also be used as a vegan ice cream base? Or is that
because of the cornstarch, no. But if we were to switch the cornstarch with maybe, let's say, xanthan gum or glucose even, you're going to want some sort of like inverted sugar and stabilizer. That could definitely be the case. If anyone is interested in like a vegan ice cream situation, I will tell you what I do. It took me years to get it where it needed to go. But what I will say, without giving out too much, is you use 2 kinds of milk and 2 kinds of fat to help emulate the fat that we would get from dairy. And that is why we don't use almond milk, because it's very thin. So it doesn't work well in ice cream, doesn't have that nice fatty mouthfeel. It'll instead feel kind of almost like grainy if you use almond milk or almond milk only.
I love that color that it's getting.
Yeah, it's all bubbly. And so here is my little bit of coconut oil. You're getting too bubbly. Sorry, y'all.
And why the coconut oil, Rabia?
I like to use coconut oil instead of butter just because we try not to eat a lot of dairy in the house, but it gives it a nice sheen and it adds to the mouthfeel, so it's like very luscious. And that way, when I
very glossy.
Yeah, see, it's so much shinier. And then when I put the plastic wrap on it, so that it can cool, it will peel off easier because there's fat in it. Even though I have no problem licking plastic wrap, I just, figure let's keep it all in the pot.
If there are people,
our chocolate
if there are
pudding.
people who have,
sorry, one more time.
No, you're fine. I'm sorry. If there are folks who have an issue with coconut, the flavor, is there another vegan fat that you would recommend for this?
Absolutely. So I have a vegan butter that I really, really like. I'm not sure if it's available for like typical at-home use, but we do use it commercially in the kitchen. It's Violife, Violife. We use their heavy whipping cream that's vegan, and we also use their butter. I'm going to put my phone down right here so you guys can stare at the chocolate.
It is available. It is available.
Oh, yay! Okay, so I'm going to show you what they look like in my home. And then if you can find them out and about, that works too. So
all right.
I'm going to flip it around for myself.
We got about 20 seconds left there.
Oh, okay. Well, here we go. This is their vegan cream. And then their vegan butter is going to be in this black wrap. I like this a lot. I use this more than regular butter now just because we're, cutting back on our animal products in our home. But this is it, y'all. This is the chocolate pudding. Once we hop off,
you would chill that down like in an ice bath bowl, or
no, it doesn't have to be an ice bath. So what I'm going to do when we hop off is basically I have like these little glass containers that I put these in, and then I put plastic wrap on top so that it doesn't form a skin, and then I put it in the fridge. Usually it's cold within a couple of hours, but if you want to let it just chill overnight, that's a good idea too. I will not be doing that. I will be eating this by 9-10 o'clock. This is for tonight.
Well, I wish we were.
Well, you can. I'll send you all the recipe.
Thank you. It'd be great if you could put it in the chat. If not, then we can send it out. We can send it out afterwards.
So here it is. It should basically coat your spoon. Oh wait, you can't see it, can you? It should coat your spoon.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's it. It's delicious. I'll go ahead
Yay,
and put
looks
the recipe
fab.
in the chat. If anyone has any questions, let me know.
Looks fabulous.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Rabia. Bonnie, are we ready for the grand finale? All right.
Such as it is.
That's right. So finally, to close us off, our final presenter is going to be Sheilah Kaufman. Sheilah is a cookbook editor and author, and will be chatting with us about some of the surprising connections between Jews and chocolate. And I believe, Bonnie, this is going to be in conversation with you. Is that right? Okay, awesome.
Yeah, Sheilah and I are longtime buddies and members of Les Dames. Also, I've heard her give talks on chocolate before, but we just thought it would be easier because she knows so much. She can go off on a really great tangent about Christopher Columbus and Hernan Cortez, but we're going to try to keep it to this kind of narrower channel. And she's also a longtime lover of chocolate. She's always, over the years, she's given me lots of chocolate recipes for everything, which I've appreciated. So this part of the chocolate history that we're going to discuss deals with how cacao sort of made its way to Europe and to America. And it has to do with some famous discoverers, right, Sheilah?
Right.
There
Can
she
you
is.
hear me?
Yep. Yep.
So the first Europeans to discover cacao may have been members of Christopher Columbus's crew, who sailed to the New World starting in 1492. It is believed that two Spanish Jews named Luis de Santiago and Gabriel Sanchez helped finance Columbus's journeys, and Columbus thought he might encounter Jewish traders on the way, so he took a Hebrew interpreter with him. And on the island of Wahana, off the coast of Honduras, he was introduced to cacao beans that were used as currency by the natives, but he mistook them for almonds.
But there was another Spanish explorer who's been credited with actually bringing cacao to Europe, right?
Yes. Some 17 years after Columbus, explorer Hernando Cortez sampled an unsweetened drink made with cacao beans during his interaction with the Aztecs in Mexico. He saw the potential of the drink if it was sweetened. The Aztecs used chilies with the drink, but he had the idea of using sugar. And he had cacao plantations planted on many islands, and he brought back barrels of the beans to Spain, and the Spanish nobility added sugar and milk and heated the drink. So by 1580, Spain began to import enough cacao to create a beginning chocolate industry.
And how were the Jews involved in that?
When the Jews were forced out of Spain and Portugal in the early 16th century, they took with them the knowledge of cacao and chocolate that they had learned in Portugal. And they converged into Bayonne, France, which grew to be a center of Jewish chocolate making. And in 1650, a Lebanese Jew opened the first coffee house in Oxford, England, which served hot chocolate.
That's great. How did chocolate move beyond something that they were just drinking?
Benjamin de Costa de Andrade, a Jew from Portugal, went to French Martinique and learned about cacao from the natives there. He became the owner of two big sugar plantations and what is believed to be the first cacao processing plant. He used his family connections in Amsterdam to export cacao to Europe, and Jewish traders brought sugar, cacao, and vanilla back to Holland as well as Europe.
Aha. And those are the ingredients that you make candy with, right?
Yeah.
And how did they, so if they were expelled from Europe, how did they get back? How did Jews get back into making chocolate there?
Because they were officially banned from doing business in France, Jews were forced to make small batches of chocolates in their own homes and in the shops of Bayonne grocers. It was also important to note that in 1865, the French passed what was called the Blue Laws, and it prohibited Jews from living in any French territories. So the Jews were expelled to other islands, usually by the Dutch, and where they learned about cacao again from the natives and began establishing plantations to grow the cacao, vanilla, which was a secret held by an old Jew, and sugar. And those are the ingredients to make chocolate candy. But for almost 300 years, there was only powdered cacao and used as a drink.
Okay, I see that Rabia has put her recipe in, and Sheilah, you and I have about a minute left. I'm sorry about that. Tell us how chocolate came to America.
Two Sephardic Jewish families, the Gomez family in New York and the Lopez family in Rhode Island, introduced chocolate to colonial America. The chocolate as candy was not known for about 300 years. It was very gritty, and it wasn't until the Industrial Revolution where they made machines that got rid of the gritty stuff. And more modern day connections were the foil-covered chocolate coins known as gelt is said to have been begun in 1920 by the Loft Company of New York, which was the largest confectionery business in the world at that time. The inspiration for gelt is pegged to made into coins after the Maccabees' military victory over the Greek Syrians in 164 BCE. Now, while I was teaching Sunday school, we gave out these Maccabee candies, and when I got home, the phone was ringing, 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 and the parents who called me were livid. When they unwrapped the Maccabee foil, inside were chocolate Santa Clauses.
That's very funny.
And Goutard is my favorite. And I brought some cocoa powder. They have many flavors of cocoa powder.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Sheilah. All right, we've got a minute to wrap it up. I want to thank Winnette and Rabia and Fran and Sheilah and Carolyn. I wish this could have been longer. I want to thank everybody for joining us, especially Kathy Gold. I think that's great. And we've got the recipe in the chat. We can also send it out after the chat when there'll be a link to the recording. And I really appreciate everybody coming. It's 7:45, so let's go have some chocolate. And early happy Valentine's Day.